On today's Apple Daily, LG displays leave Apple stores, Silver Sparrow malware update, Scribble on iPad, don't scribble on my iPad, making our videos, is 120Hz worth it, and MacBook Pro ETAs.
For the latest Apple news, rumors, and leaks, every weekday at 12 UTC, join us in the iCave.
I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss a thing. That way you can join my notification squad and know every time we start a new video. If you want to join, all you need to do is make sure you are subscribed, ring the bell and let me know in the comments that you've done it by posting up hashtag notification squad at the bottom. Without any further ado, we will get into it, but first you may notice that we are back to 1080p. There is a very good reason for that, which is that YouTube is very slow at processing my videos when they're in 4K. I don't think you're going to gain much out of seeing my beard in more detail than before, so we're going to go back to 1080p. I'm going to reserve 4K for when we have big like event type videos. If we're doing something where I'm going to do a deep analysis of something about Apple, then we will go 4K, then we will go to the higher quality. But for now, all you need is to be able to hear my sultry English tones. Aluminium. But let's get into the news. LG UltraFine Monitors exit the European Apple stores, but why? Now, there's been a huge amount of excitement online in the last day or so, because it turns out that these 4K and 5K Ultrafine panels from LG, which Apple has been selling through its own stores, which is a very rare thing, are leaving the Apple stores. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? The reason they are doing this is not because we're getting new displays immediately. That is unfortunately not the reason. The reason is that these displays actually use too much power at idle for the European Union's regulations on such things. They use about 1 watt while they are basically powered off, which is too much. That's too much. For comparison, Apple's 6K Pro Display XDR uses about 0.38 of 1 watt, which is a lot better. That is the reason that they are leaving the Apple stores, because they're not legally allowed to be sold in Europe anymore in the current form. Now, LG may update them, or Apple may be creating their own version of these displays. It's possible, but unfortunately it's not as simple as they've taken them out of the stores so that they can put their own ones in there. That would have been fabulous, but it also doesn't look like it's probably true. Sorry. Silver Sparrow malware update. So we were talking about this yesterday. It's a little bit scary. It was one of the first bits of malware to infect any of the M1 Macs, because it was basically recompiled to work with them. But we have an update, Apple is aware of it, and Apple is doing their thing. But to understand what's going on here first, we need to know what code signing is. So since February of 2020, Apple has required all Mac software distributed with a developer ID outside of the App Store to be submitted to Apple's Notary service, scanning for malicious code and code signing issues. What does all of that mean? It basically means that when people talk about Macs not needing antivirus software, in simple terms, it's because of this. Apple scans it for you and then only allows software to run from trusted developers who have a trusted certificate. And then if a problem like this is identified, for example, if the code is hijacked, Apple can revoke that certificate, meaning that even if you've already downloaded the software, it won't run, because when it calls into Apple to check the certificate, it comes back as an invalid certificate and then it can't run. Now, this has a couple of advantages. The first is that Apple was able to do this within less than 24 hours of this being discovered, because they don't have to wait for it to be rolled out. They don't have to rely on people to update their own software in order for this to work. They just need to update their own servers that have this kind of list of all the valid certificates on it. That way, as soon as they have an issue, they can revoke it directly, and as soon as Macs start calling in to check on that software, they cannot run it. It is done as soon as it is done on Apple's side, which is a pretty clever way of doing things. In addition, it turns out that Malware Bytes can remove the infection according to reports, so that's a positive too. And while most people don't really need to run antivirus software on a Mac, in fact, I don't think anyone really needs to, except if you're doing stuff that's super sensitive, Malware Bytes is a great little bit of software that you can get. It's a freebie. They have a licensed version as well, but they have a free version that you can use, and you can basically just run one of those scans every so often just to double check that there's nothing going awry with your Mac. But it's not something that you need to keep running in the background all the time like with other platforms. Right, let's get into some iCave answers. Alric Samuel Godfrey asks, iCave answers, how does Scribble on iPad work for you? I have an A10X chip iPad, which is I think the 6th gen, so I don't have the neural engine, and I was wondering if that makes a huge difference with handwriting recognition. My handwriting is rather bad. Even when I do write things clearly, it struggles to get it right, plus it's been draining my battery and heating up my iPad. I don't have a keyboard for my iPad, so I was really excited when this feature came out. So yeah, I think the Scribble feature is a really compelling thing that Apple's brought out. However, I can't see it. Like, I've got my iPad Air, it's the current generation iPad Air with the Apple Pencil 2. And to be completely honest, I wouldn't want to use Scribble as like my full-time way of writing stuff on the iPad. I actually think the on-screen keyboard is probably faster than trying to use Scribble in terms of how accurate it is. But again, I don't have the best handwriting, so I think we're in the same boat here. However, the reason that your iPad is probably getting a bit hotter is because, as you say, it doesn't have that neural engine, so it's having to put everything through the compute engine, I would guess. Again, not a systems architect, but that would make the most sense for me on how it's trying to process all of that. I don't think it's going to affect accuracy, but you may well be right, it is probably affecting heat and battery life. What I would suggest is if you don't want to invest heavily in your iPad, but you want to be able to take notes easily, grab yourself a Bluetooth keyboard. You can get them for like £15 or $20 on Amazon. It's not going to cost you a great deal. Give it a try, see if it works for you, but that is what I would do if I had a lot of notes to take and a lot of writing to do. That's the way that I would go. Although, that being said, I think a lot of people these days can probably type just as fast on their phone as they can type on a keyboard, so maybe type on your phone, copy and paste it over to your iPad. That could work too. Callum Hunt, hi Dave, love your content and I'm thinking of creating a YouTube channel but need help on edit tips and tricks. Would you mind making a video or two on it? So Callum, absolutely happy to give as much advice as I can. It's very difficult for me to do it kind of on here, but I will run you through very quickly the system that I use. So my system is much more based on making volume content, so I make a lot of videos. I make videos like this every single day, at least every weekday, and sometimes there's multiple videos per day. So in terms of speed of getting stuff done, I've got my mount that I put my iPhone onto right here in front of me, which stays there all the time. It's attached to the wall, it's got a light above it, there's another light up here, and there's a light above my head, just above the door here, which shines onto the back of my head. That's how we get the lighting in here. It's a 3-point setup, quite simple. Now for the first few topics that we have during the day, those are scripted in general. They weren't today because I didn't have time, but generally they're scripted, and I have another iPhone sitting under this iPhone with a bit of glass as a teleprompter, which basically scrolls up through my script. This is all off the cuff pretty much today. There was a couple of little bits that I had scripted just for the malware stuff to make sure that I got that right. And in terms of audio and video, everything's filmed on my iPhone. I also have my iPad sitting right here next to it. That works as my monitor, so I use Filmic Pro is the app that I shoot in. I'm now shooting back in 1080p at 60 frames a second because, let's be honest, we're not doing anything action-y here. We're not doing anything that you really want to watch in particular detail. So make sure that you choose the right settings for your phone so you're not wasting time on the edit. And as soon as you've finished videoing, now I'm also using an external microphone, which you can see here. This is a very cheap external lav mic. It's a wired one, and that just kind of runs down my shirt and up and through one of the lightning dongles into the bottom of the iPhone. The reason I use Filmic Pro as well, rather than using the native camera app, is because I'm able to control the level on the microphone. That's the main reason that I actually use that app, not about the video. Then once all of that is done, the file gets airdropped from my iPhone over to my Mac, and then I edit in Final Cut Pro. But you could do it on your phone. If you want to do everything on the cheap, you could use something like LumaFusion, which I've used quite a bit in the past, and if you get used to using LumaFusion, you can also use it on an M1 Mac now quite happily on the desktop. It's not as great as Final Cut. It's not as probably slick as iMovie. iMovie is really good, but it only lets you do simple stuff. LumaFusion is somewhere in between iMovie and Final Cut. And then Final Cut gives me kind of all of the toys to play with, all of the fun titles, all of that kind of stuff. In terms of the editing and stuff, I literally just go through the whole timeline, chop out all the bits that we don't want, and then I will go back to the beginning again and add in B-roll, the kind of stuff that gets overlaid over the top of it, which I don't do a great deal of. Graphics I make in Photoshop and then throw those over the top as well. And that's kind of it. There's nothing really tippy about the way that I do it, other than kind of the setup that I use for filming. That's the main thing. If you've got any specific questions, feel free to throw them down in the comments again. Catch me on Instagram or something like that. Throw me over some questions and I can point you in the right direction there. Hope that helps. And Rob, is back. So we've got a couple of questions here that relate to 120 Hz. So we'll start with this one. Is 120 Hz screen that much better than 60 Hz screen? I can't tell the difference, although I've never had them side by side. How much battery penalty is there for 120 Hz, or does it actually save battery because it's adaptive Hertz? Also, would mini LED screen save battery in dark mode because only selected LED sectors are switched on? If so, it might cancel out the extra battery usage from a 120 Hz screen. Finally, on an iPhone, I would rather have extra battery time than 120 Hz. Anyone else agree? Especially in the iPhone mini or the iPhone SE. So, right, a few things to unpack there. We'll start at the end and work our way back. So iPhone mini and iPhone SE will both not get 120 Hz ProMotion anyway. That is because it looks like it's only coming to the Pro models, at least to begin with. So you're going to be getting it in the Pro and the Pro Max. Those are the two models. So the two with the smaller batteries, not going to get this option anyway. But yes, we are talking about ProMotion as opposed to 120 Hz straight refresh rate. So 120 Hz basically means that the screen is refreshed 120 times a second. With ProMotion, the screen refresh rate I think can go anywhere between 48 and 120 Hz. And Apple has just patented a way of controlling the screens up to 240 Hz. So double what we're expecting for ProMotion. As I say, it's an adaptive refresh rate, so it will slow all the way down to 48 Hz when you are doing things like watching a movie that is shot in 24 frames a second, so it will actually match the frame rates because you'll be getting 2 screen refreshes per frame, which is fine. You want nice, even mixes there, but also, things like the Apple Watch, especially the always-on Apple Watch displays, can go down as far as 1 Hz, so they basically refresh once a second. So that is a very good way of reducing the amount of battery life used. And yeah, in general, it's not going to use a massive amount of extra battery life, but when you are doing those things that require the ProMotion 120 Hz, it's going to use a little bit more power, and it's going to be using a little bit more of your CPU's grunt as well. So anything like this where you're putting out more frames to the display, you are also using more power from the CPU and more, or from the GPU rather, and you're also going to use more battery as a result of that. However, it tends to balance itself out. This is the reason that Apple has ProMotion instead of just 120 Hz, so it can balance out and it can slow right down when it's not doing anything interesting. Now, in terms of battery life, because of the mini LEDs, mini LED, yes, basically only the sectors of the screen, the areas of the screen with bright stuff on will be lit, and the rest of the screen will be dark. So that makes sense. Yes, it will certainly save some battery. How much? Not 100% sure, but it could be comparable to using an OLED display because those are also lower powered. And I guess the last thing to mention is the is it worth it thing. And to me, it's not something that I'm that bothered about. I know as a tech YouTuber, I am probably the only tech YouTuber that doesn't think it matters that much, although actually I think John Prosser was saying he doesn't care, or at least he doesn't think that generally people care. So yeah, I don't think it's a big deal particularly. I'm sure it will be lovely once I have it, but I'm not thinking to myself, oh, well, I'm not going to get the next iPhone because it hasn't got this. I really don't understand that because it makes very, very little difference. Yes, it'll make a bit of difference if you're playing Call of Duty and that's enabled for 120 Hz. You might, be a frame ahead of someone else and that might be how you win. But for me, playing with my phone in a normal way, it makes no difference to me at all. Next up, Suvik Mukherjee asks, are we getting 120Hz screen refresh rate on iPhone 12s Pro models in 2021? If that happens, will it be silky smooth ProMotion like what we've got on the iPad Pros? Well, absolutely, that seems to be what the rumours are saying, and yes, 120Hz ProMotion does mean that you will get the silky smooth transitions when you're moving backwards and forwards and people wiggling their fingers on the screen to see if it looks any different. And that's kind of the only time that you'll notice it. But yeah, it looks very much like that is coming to the next iPhones, and I'm sure people will be very excited. Some of them, not many. Rico the MLG Pro asks, I don't know if you've answered this question already, but when will the next generation MacBook Pros be released, because my 2017 iPad Pro is starting to show its age? And will the new MacBook Pros have 120Hz ProMotion displays? So we have another question about ProMotion, and there's no indication really for the laptops what we're going to be expecting to see. Now, all of the Apple MacBooks at the moment, as far as I'm aware, only have 60Hz displays. So that would be a nice little jump up, especially if that's something that comes along with the redesign with the 40 and the 16 inches that we're expecting, but are not confirmed. And the M1X should have no problems at all with driving that, because it's going to have plenty of headroom. It's going to have 16 cores of graphics performance. By all accounts, that's the most likely thing, which is twice what the M1 has, and the M1's pretty good as it is. So I don't think we're going to have any problems with that. It should work absolutely fine. I'm sure that if they do add in ProMotion displays, there will be an option to turn that off if you don't want to have the extra frames being rendered. But yeah, having the panels there that can display it would be awesome. Don't know if we will. But in terms of dates that we're expecting to see stuff, now I was expecting to see them this month coming in March. It looks like nobody else agrees with me on that anymore, so it looks like we might be getting them around WWDC, which is June normally. Last year it was a little bit later in June. It was the 22nd of June, which we think was because it was pushed back a little bit because of COVID. I expect it to be early June this year, probably maybe even around the 1st or 2nd of June. So we could have them announced there, probably shipping the following week. So we're talking mid-June that they would actually be shipping, if that's correct. If not, it could be later in the year, but I don't think they're going to hold on to it and give it an M2 chip, because that's not going to be the big performance jump that we'll get with M1X. If anyone doesn't understand what the difference between M1, M1X and M2 and stuff like that is, let me know down in the comments that it's confusing for you, and I will make a specific video about it, because there seems to be some confusion still there. And there's nothing wrong with being confused, because we're all kind of assuming too, but we can give you an idea of what we mean when we talk about the different chips. But yeah, in terms of ProMotion displays, I think it would be an awesome feature, but I'm not 100% convinced. Again, it would be kind of keeping up with the Joneses a little bit for me, because these are not really gaming machines. I'm not sure what the real benefit would be, but it's always nice to have. So that's it for today's show. Thank you all for joining me. I will catch you in the next one. Don't forget to leave any questions you've got down in the comments. #iCaveAnswers. See you in the next one.